Welcome. We're glad that you could join us today. I am happy to be able to speak with Dr. Dawn Morton. Dr. Morton is the director of our Doctor of Ministry program. She also oversees institutional assessment for Ashland Theological Seminary. And she is also assistant professor of Christian formation and leadership. Today, Dr. Morton and I are going to be talking about how to shape your ministry through the Doctor of Ministry project. So Dr. Morton, welcome, and I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Great, it's good to be here with you.
Wonderful. So let's jump right in, and let's begin with just an overall question that I have for you. Tell us briefly, what is the goal of the Doctor of Ministry program for our students?
Certainly. Overall, of course, students come into the program and they feel the goal is, hey, I need to write this paper so that I can graduate. And that certainly is one of the goals. But there's certainly a deeper context to this. Our main goal is to assist a student who comes in to increase their own Christian leadership skills, their knowledge, and even their practical action, living it out in a theology based in a foundation that would support their own church ministry context. Of course, this is by a variety of ways. So each student is different, and we take that into the whole picture of the program. But our desire is certainly to provide that avenue in which Christian leaders from various walks may explore a topic or a project, a problem maybe that they notice in their own ministry context, or even a brand new idea that maybe they've never explored in their own denomination. All of that is to help them execute a project that fits their own ministry context. And you'll hear me say that often, ministry context. That's a critical piece of this program. And then, of course, the final written document for the program. One of the things I like to share with brand new students is this program will enhance their ministry work in multiple ways. It's not just simply a program to research and to write. Certainly that is part of the program. But we want that student to be enhanced by going through this process, and that their ministry context is certainly enhanced, whether changed, increased in growth, or just maybe a better understanding of what they find themselves within.
Thank you. So several times you mentioned ministry context, and this is critical for the DMIN program. In fact, in order to be able to do the project, one must work within their ministry context in some respect, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So when we think of the work and the project being in the ministry context, obviously they have work that they need to do before they perform their project and assess it and then write about it. They've got classes they need to take. So how does that part of the program assist the student in preparing for their project?
Well, I like to call it it's hand in hand. The nice part about our courses is that our 3 foundation courses, no matter what track you're in, you will have some foundational courses to the whole process of your subject and your topic. So for instance, you'll have biblical and theological, historical, and you'll also look at contemporary foundations as well. But we don't stop there. We don't say, here's a course, take the course. We ask you to contemplate and reflect upon the type of project that you would complete, and also what is your subject or your material. What is the direction of your project? So for instance, if a student is a pastor of a church and wants to explore a new ministry, and maybe how would the congregation sort of calculate that new ministry? What are their thoughts, their ideas? How do they sense that to come about? Who do they feel should run that new ministry? Those kinds of things have to be contemplated in the process of taking that course. So the nice part about taking a biblical course, they will look at biblical passages that would support the kind of project they want to do. So that's why I call it hand in hand. So the student is not only involved in research and writing, but it's certainly within their own ministry context of what does that research and writing do for that context.
Very good. So obviously from what you're saying, the students in their courses are doing work that is going to help inform their project.
Absolutely.
So I guess that leads to another question, which is students, they don't need to have a fully developed sense of their project when they walk into the first course. How does the courses help them as they think about what they want to do with their project?
Certainly. In fact, what I find is very few students walk in and say, I know exactly what I want to do. It is shaped throughout the courses. So if their first course is dealing with theological issues, then their theological section is being developed as they think about their project in their ministry context. So if they are from a Pentecostal background, which by the way, our seminary has historically had over 70 different denominational groups. So because we have a wide range of folks, you're going to work in your own context. So if you come in and you're Pentecostal, we're not asking you to work from a Methodist background. So your theological foundations and principles certainly would apply to your project as you develop and shape that. The same would be if you come into the biblical section and you say, well, I come from a more Reformed tradition. Can I use that tradition as I'm interpreting biblical scriptures? Absolutely. We want you to work within your ministry context. And the same I say to our Black students, our African American students. Many times they come in and they're concerned, can I work within my own ministry context? Yes, we want those courses to be advantageous for you. So those courses are tied to your ministry context. And here's some of the ways maybe that would help a student. So the student is taking a biblical course and they happen to be a chaplain. So how does that fit? Well, certainly chaplains, we have Christian chaplains out there who are doing ministry work, but they're not in the context of the church. So they might work out of a hospital situation. And they use that course material to even at that time to advance their own chaplaincy skills. So for instance, maybe they've not considered some of the biblical scriptures that would support care and loving on other people, especially in time of need. So maybe they have not reviewed some of those scriptures. And so it gives them an opportunity now to explore scriptures and to determine what scriptures specifically pertain to my project. And as they go through these courses, what happens is their project begins to develop. They may have what I call the sketchy outline. And by the time they arrive at the research proposal course, they pretty much know at this point now where the project needs to go. It's now just fine-tuning it to get it there.
Very good, thank you. So, you know, you've talked about some of the foundational sections that students write about in their final document. You've mentioned the biblical and the theological sections. But let's talk a little bit about the project specifically. There are 3 types of projects that you
Sure.
can do in Ashland Theological Seminary's DMin program. What are those 3 types of projects?
Certainly. Yes, we have 3 kinds of projects. The first one would be what we call discovery. Now, a discovery project, I want you to think of a large group. So you want to discover something, whether it's maybe it's knowledge about a certain group or how they think. Maybe you want to explore what kind of behaviors that group has expressed, or maybe how they've expressed it towards another group. Maybe you want to know more of the history of a group, and you just simply are trying to, what I call detective work. You're exploring, you're getting your little looking glass out, and you're saying, what clues are there in this particular group that might answer my questions? And so a discovery project takes on a large group of people, such as 150 people were examined in one of the projects, and the student was from Missionary Alliance background. And he wanted to find out what are the characteristics of missionaries and what is the practice of churches in Missionary Alliance of sending out these missionaries. And so he was working towards, what does my denomination even say about this? Because there seemed to be, he had detected a problem, that there seemed to be misinformation between various groups. And so he wanted to get to the bottom of it as to what exactly is the criteria, and could we all agree on that criteria as a denomination? And so that's just one idea for a discovery. The second kind of project is what we call an impact study. The impact study is the opposite. Think small group. Instead of a large group, you're looking at a small group of people who maybe 8 to 12 participants in which you want to teach them something. You're going to walk them through a process. It could be you want to teach a prayer focus or various kinds of prayers, but you want to determine, does this group grow? Do they change in their thoughts or their behaviors? It's not simply you want to know what they are. You want to see if can you impact them through a process or a teaching. And that's a great process, especially many of our students who seem to have a counseling background really enjoy an impact study because they can walk the participants through a process in order to see if that process has helped people to grow. And our final project, of course, is one that we do have quite a number of students who choose this. It's called creating a resource. And this particular area, I like to tell students, think writing. Notice one's think large, think small, and now think writing, because this particular project is not working with a group until the resource is written. And then after the resource is written, such as a manual or a workbook, and I thought, what a great idea. And what I find is many students who go on after our program end up writing publications from this process of creating a resource. And so that's a great way for students to find out, is that resource valuable? Did it meet the goals of the resource? Maybe they wanted to make sure it was a biblical resource. So they are asking an expert panel of 10 to 15 members, what are their thoughts on this resource? And so they give a survey out, and all three of these projects have surveys. They're just done a bit different for each kind of project, and each student has guidance through that process.
So you gave us an example of a discovery project. Can you give us an example of an impact and also a resource project?
Sure. In fact, I have some titles of projects here that may be helpful to hear those. So an impact study on the awareness of the presence of God through prayer. This particular student looked at the process of prayer and taught on that process, walked participants through the various kinds of prayers that people say, and wanted to find out, were they aware of God's presence in the midst of prayer? And that's what was measured and evaluated in the study. Another one was an impact study of the safe place prayer this is a certain kind of prayer, applied to women who endured childhood sexual abuse. We had a student who had a counseling background, and the counseling background certainly assisted her because this was a sensitive subject. Certainly it would be difficult to bring a group of people together which had a difficult background such as childhood sexual abuse, and then to walk them through the safe place prayer and to find out, did this assist the participants in the process? So that's a couple ideas for an impact study. I'll give you one more too for the discovery one. A discovery of roles and responsibilities of Black pastors' wives in the Shepherd's Connection. I like that title and project because it's very oriented to that specific denomination and that specific church. Notice that it's for Black pastors' wives, but it's also in the Shepherd's Connection. That's a unique ministry to a certain church. Again, that's showing working within the ministry context. A resource example is a resource, spiritual companionship and bipolar disorder. This particular student, in fact, I believe they just finished up last year, they understood that spiritual companionship was in many arenas, but in a counseling arena, it was not always present. And especially when you broke it down and went into a particular area, such as bipolar disorders, she had found that there was very little help in order to assist patients such as this. And so she wrote the resource to help counseling agencies to understand spiritual life as it is connected to bipolar situations such as disorders or lapses. So one other resource that a student has just finished up, they're graduating this year. This student wrote Child of Wonder, a resource for Christian caregivers leading children in spiritual practice. That's it. I tell you, I got a chance to read that particular resource, and that was really a wonderful resource to assist any caregiver who is working with children, whether that would be in a counseling realm or even within the church ministry context. So this particular resource is even going on to be published. She's in the process of getting it published so that it will be used by other groups as well.
Very
so that's
good.
just a few examples.
Sure. So it sounds like, based on those descriptions and those titles that you gave, that students choose project areas that really is critical to their work wherever they find themselves in ministry, whether they're pastors or teachers or counselors, or whether they work in the medical field in some respect. That these areas of project are areas that they really feel like they need to have, would you say, a higher level of competency and understanding?
Absolutely. I find our students come in, they're very skilled already. What we're allowing them to do to use those skills and their knowledge that they already have, coming alongside of them saying, how can we help you to create a project that would enhance the skills that you already have? So for instance, we have a current student, he is from Kenya, Africa, but he lives in the States and has been here for some time. But because he lives in Texas, there are a variety of African churches. And he noticed some problems and he said, I think it stems back. We need to take the training back to Kenya, to the spiritual leaders there. And so his project will be traveling back to Kenya, performing a project while he's there in Africa with spiritual leaders who will work with him. He's going to teach them, train them, and walk them through an impact study. And then he will come back to find out how they put these practices into place and what were the results. And so it's an exciting thing. Obviously, this person is very competent. He's working in his ministry context, and it could greatly impact his home life as well.
Very good. Well, that leads me to one last question I have for you, and I think you've probably answered part of it already. The process that our students go through as they take classes, they write about, they do research, they determine their project, they perform the project, assess it, and write about it. How does that process help them even after they're done with the program as they go back into their ministry context? What does that give them that helps them in other areas of ministry?
Sure. Well, certainly one that I've already mentioned was publication. We have, and I would say we have about 40 to 50% of our students go out and publish something, whether it's a journal article, a book, a manual. Obviously, we have students who write even beyond just their project, which is exciting. And many of them go on and use that writing for various roles, such as teaching. Another thing, and I call it publication and projects, students who do not enter the publication realm, they are out there creating new projects. I think of a student who graduated who is in Ghana. And in Ghana, this particular student is raising funds, buying land to set free these women and their children who have been bought by the local priest and who have been basically they're slaves for their entire life for this priest. And so he is buying land. He is helping to educate these women along with his wife. And he and she both, they share in this ministry to help people beyond. And this project has taken traction. He has had many people involved. They've already bought the land. They're already in the process of beginning to build the home for these families. And so while he may not be in a publication process, he's certainly in a project process. He's gone on to do other things with his project. I would say the next thing would be teaching in the academy. And what I mean by that is, well, students may not always return to a seminary and be a professor. They certainly are professors out there in various forms. We have a number of our students who go on and they work at the local college level. So they may go into community college or a Bible college, and they are using their skills. Many of them are using the areas that they studied. So if they have worked with bipolar and writing a manual, they may be working with community groups out there who allow them to come in and do a teaching seminar to share the resources that they have discovered in their project. I think of two other areas. Of course, the one is the speaking opportunities, but also promotion. Believe it or not, many of our students will use this degree and it will help to promote them to the next step of life, in which if they did not have the degree, they probably would not have that opportunity of promotion. Now, I certainly don't want to give the appearance that everybody gets promoted, because
Sure.
we know that's certainly not the case.
Sure.
But they certainly are elevated into positions within their community. And I think of a certain student who had graduated, and he certainly was elevated when he took a pastoral role in which he had never held the senior lead position before. And so I think of another student as well who was elevated, leaning towards that, waiting upon his finalized document and approval from the DMIN program, and he moved into the senior role of a mega church. So in the midst of that transition, he was finishing up his project, but that certainly was a factor of him taking that lead role.
Sure.
So there certainly are elevated cases where students position themselves or have that opportunity to be positioned. And that's an exciting thing through our program. So I think of publication and projects, teaching in the academy, speaking opportunities. Many have, in fact, I follow 2 of our graduates on Facebook who have teaching ministries. Both of these African-American women graduated from our programs at 2 different years, and they have a phenomenal ministry in teaching the Word of God. And they do this through Facebook. They do it through other avenues of ministry. And it's been exciting to see what our students actually do with their degree.
Sure, of course. Well, I want to thank you for spending this time to discuss this. The Doctor of Ministry program has been a very vital part of Ashland Theological Seminary. And it's always been very rewarding to see, to watch the students develop their projects, to go through all of that, and then to graduate, and then to go on. And it has been very obvious that a lot of these projects have a lot of significance beyond the time of their graduation, that it does make a big impact in their ministries and in the lives of the people that they are surrounded by.
Yeah, and one thing I would say too is we love our alum. They certainly are a part of our Doctor of Ministry program as well, because a number of them come back and they end up being Doctor of Ministry advisors to students coming behind them, as well as various adjuncts that we have used in our programming. So it's really been a blessed time to work with Doctor of Ministry students.
Very good. Well, once again, thank you. I appreciate your time and your efforts. And obviously, if there's anybody who watches this that would be interested in the Doctor of Ministry program, they can reach out to you directly, correct?
Absolutely. You can find me on the website at Ashland Theological Seminary. That would have my contact information, or you can just go to email dmorton@ashland.edu, and that's the best way to contact me. I pretty much am a techie, so I kind of live in the email land and technology.
Very good. Very good. Well, once again, thank you. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.